If you are fully vaccinated, if your kids are vaccinated, if you've had your booster shots, I would assume you could feel pretty good about things. Even if you get it and figure that it's not going to be a big deal. If you are planning on visiting older relatives, maybe immunocompromised relatives, should you be rethinking that plan?
Yeah, look, I think holiday plans can be made more safe, but I do believe that we're in for a difficult 4 to 6 weeks right now, and people who are vulnerable need to take added precautions. This is a highly contagious variant. It is breaking through the immunity offered by prior infection and vaccination. So people who know that they're vulnerable, many of whom have been sheltering for a year and living sadly diminished lives because they haven't been able to do the things that they want to do. This is going to be a very difficult 4 or 6 weeks. And so I would start to just take added precautions. That doesn't mean you can't gather safely. But if you're going to do it in a setting of people who are at risk from this virus, you really need to do things like testing and make sure you're not introducing an asymptomatic infection into that setting, because certain people are excessively vulnerable to this virus. Omicron, Delta, all of these variants.
Hey, Scott, can we just do a little practical news you can use on testing for a moment? I follow Michael Mina, who I think you follow as well, online around a lot of the testing procedures. And it seems like, you know, before a dinner or a family event, people are saying test 48 hours, within 72 or 48 hours prior to said dinner or meal or gathering. And yet I think a lot of the testing specialists are now saying, no. What you need to be doing is literally taking a rapid test on the way in the door within an hour or two prior to the actual gathering, rather than something that tells you that you thought you didn't have it, especially as Omicron is as transmissible as this. Is that the right advice?
Generally speaking, I mean, you shouldn't use a rapid test if you have a high index of suspicion that you may be infected. So you should go out and get a PCR test. But if you're using a rapid test to try to protect the social gathering, a PCR test is generally going to register a positive result earlier than an antigen-based test. An antigen-based test, the rapid test that you would use at home, aren't going to register a positive result until you have enough virus in your body to actually produce enough antigens to get a hit on that test. And so that may be later in the course of the illness. It may be after you manifest symptoms. And so you want to generally use that test as close as possible to the setting, to the activity that you're trying to protect through using testing. And I would still recommend, serial testing if you can. Pull more than one test if you're really cautious, want to be cautious about protecting people who are going into a congregate setting. You could test multiple times in advance of that setting, because these tests are more likely to register a positive result. They get more sensitive when you do serial testing over a short period of time.
If you think this burns through in 4 to 6 weeks, I mean, that's the good news. If we get done with this in 4 to 6 weeks, but it's really prevalent right now in New York and Philadelphia, in the tri-state area here, Rhode Island, places like that. Is this going to be similar to what we've seen with Delta, where different areas of the country see waves at different times? And I ask that because if we're done in 4 to 6 weeks and then you can feel free to move around the country again, that's much better news than, okay, you're safe in your little area, but if you move, you might be landing in another pocket of it somewhere else.
Yeah, look, this is probably going to move through the country more quickly than these other variants have. But that said, you're right. This has been a highly regionalized epidemic all the way through, and you don't see a simultaneous epidemic nationally, and this is unlikely to be one either. I think that right now it's very prevalent in the tri-state area, probably far more prevalent than what we're picking up, and we'll probably get a view of that this week. But the other thing is that Omicron may course its way through the population, and Delta may be the residual variant that stays with us. Omicron does appear to be more contagious because of its immune escape qualities, because it's infecting a large pool of people who have some baseline immunity. But the virus itself doesn't seem to be inherently more contagious than Delta. Delta, inherently, the characteristics of the virus seem to make it a more contagious virus. So once Omicron courses its way through the population, we develop some baseline immunity to that. That immunity may not be cross-reactive to Delta, and so Omicron may come and go, and Delta may remain with us.